You're listening to Accounting for Growth, the podcast where growth leaders in accounting go beyond referrals alone and think bigger. I'm Chad Person, your host and the founder and president of Accounting CMO. Each episode, we bring in experts at the edge of accounting innovation to share quick, actionable insights that help you lead with confidence, drive smart growth, and move your firm forward. Let's dive in. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Accounting for Growth podcast. You're listening to our three-part series, Leading Growth with Clarity and Confidence. In the first episode, we talked about what holds many firms back when it comes to growth and why this focus on growth can often stall. Today, we're focusing on breakthroughs, right? How can we break through that with practical steps that firms can take to modernize their growth engine? And I'm joined again for this three-part series with Charles Brower, who joined us episode 1. Charles, if you remember, has helped many professional services firms kind of move from this scattered efforts to obviously more sustainable, data-driven growth. So excited to have you back, Charles. Lots to unpack with this one again.
Thank you very much. Great to be here, and lots to talk about today.
For sure. So let's get into it. This first segment here, let's jump into, firms and how they have an opportunity. And I think many of them probably have just gone through it or are beginning the process now, but an opportunity annually, right, to go through and define a vision for marketing success, marketing, driven growth. You and I have talked about this many times, Charles, but how many times do you walk in and we're working with firms that absolutely have a growth goal, perhaps a plan to go with it. And it often sounds like, yeah, our growth goal this year is 10%, it's 15%. That's our vision for growth. And please pick it up from there.
I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over the years about that a growth number is not necessarily a vision or a go-to-market plan for what you need to do. So I'm a firm believer that a marketing vision is a necessary conversation, and that gaining buy-in from leadership and the marketing team for those people, processes, technology that are going to be put in place, and the vision to start to establish the playbook that you want to build. Starting with that conversation often means that you start with a frank and practical, realistic conversation assessment of where you are now. What's the current state of affairs? What's broken? What needs to be fixed? But more importantly, what do you want marketing to do, right? What do you want marketing to do to accelerate the growth opportunities, to contribute to the pipeline, to be aligned to the business itself? And in many instances, there is misalignment to the actual business structure itself. And that's important to get the vision right.
It is. I don't in any way mean to be trying to make humor out of a firm's growth goal of being at 10 or 15%, and that's the vision. Again, at the end of the day, having a growth goal is absolutely an important part of pursuing success in a firm, but taking a step back, as you've suggested, and really evaluating marketing as a function and how we want it to help us drive towards those growth goals. And, an example of that would be great if and we'll use round numbers, but if 10% is that growth goal, well, what's that look like? And what percentage of that growth is going to come from existing clients versus net new businesses, right? What percentage of that is going to be maybe focused on growth in this particular service line versus over here where we don't feel like there's either the capacity to growth inside the firm today, or perhaps the potential in the market to grow that service line. So just again, thinking more strategically about where that growth is going to come from my perspective, gives the marketing function and the marketing leadership a better, clearer picture of where to invest, right?
I think that's exactly right. And I would say that if you do define those segments, and for those organizations that are perhaps not evolved to, let's say, industry specialization or geographic specialization, you can just simply say, just as you mentioned, what what part of the market, what part of the solutions market do we want to grow, how fast, and make sure that you're realistic about the resources that you want to put behind that, the client service resources you're going to put behind that. You don't want the cart before the horse.
Right.
And the really interesting thing is if you have that meaningful dialogue around vision, then what we're going to talk about in just a minute will follow naturally as a natural next 2 or 3 steps from that vision you've established for where you want to go. And it doesn't have to be a 10-year plan. It could be a 1, 2, 3
Yep.
year plan
Yep.
that's flexible and has some changes along the way.
100%. Again, you and I understand as leaders of kind of a marketing function that it's a plan's never set and forget, right? It's always you have this goal you're pursuing, but the execution to get there will change, frankly, it needs to be nimble enough to change and adjust as the market demands it. The other thing I would say, and you've brought this up either today or in previous conversations, is it's the importance of ensuring that you mentioned people, process, technology, connecting with the other functional areas of the business, HR, right? Do we have the capacity to growth in a particular area? Operations, do we have the right systems and processes and technologies in place to drive, innovation where needed to be competitive at growing a particular service line, et cetera? So again, an opportunity to ensure that you've got other areas of the firm aligned as well, or frankly, your marketing plan is aligned with other areas of the firm either way, right?
Yeah, I think that's spot on too. And I would tell you that one thing that sticks out in that comment is never underestimate the amount of time and energy it's going to take to get the technology where you want it to be, right? From the beginning through the middle to the end of your pipeline. Uh, I have found in the last few years that can be the biggest challenge. And the vision is a great tool to start to talk about the technology you need in order to go downstream and actually do the types of measurement and reporting you want to accomplish.
Yep. Great. Yeah. So great. So again, being very thoughtful about defining a vision for growth and marketing is critical. And again, lots more to tee up there if we had the time to do it. But let's keep moving on here. Now let's move or pivot to more along the lines of, okay, now that we have a thoughtful growth vision, let's talk about the go-to-market framework associated with pursuing success or that vision. For me, I often run into firms that, again, may have a growth goal, may even have a plan to go with it, but there often isn't clear go-to-market structure necessarily that's needed to execute what I would consider to be an impactful growth plan. And I'll give you an example of that. Uh, I think if you would talk to most partners in a CPA firm, they would say they absolutely understand who their clients are. And they do, I'm sure, at a level, clearly understand the needs of that client. But if you take a step back and you start looking at growing your firm, in particular segment, for a particular buyer, I see that many firms don't make the investments to truly understand how buyers buy that service that they want to be a catalyst for growth in their firm. And so let's talk a bit about that for a moment.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in a very rigorous go-to-market planning process, and I think that naturally follows the vision that you establish for marketing and where you want it to go. I think the go-to-market plan by business segment, it can be by BU in a large organization, it might be by service line in a smaller or even industry. But you need to align around a pretty rigorous approach to understanding things like your market insights and research, and AI can help with that, by the way. Competitor SWOTs, your 2x2s and your heat map for solutions, buyer profiles, buyer journeys, or there's a litany actually of 10 or 12 big things that go into creating a strong, viable, and referenceable go-to-market structure for your firm.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple things I want to touch on that your remarks there. First of all, Um, when you talk with clients, I mean, you can, you said AI can absolutely help you do additional research and gain insights on the market and growth opportunities. I don't believe it necessarily can always replace everything you can do, and including interviewing a few of your what you consider to be ideal clients, right? To understand um, why they chose you. And as they look out in the marketplace as buyers of professional services, what's that journey look like for them? Where do they begin that process to seek advice? How do they go about searching for those services? What qualities they look for in a firm? What was their, to some degree, experience with you, and why did they choose you? All of these give you insights that help you strengthen your offering in the marketplace, frankly, strengthen your brand position in the marketplace. And the thing I love about it is it's based upon insights from your existing ideal clients. It's a positioning that they're actually crafting for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I really feel like if you don't have a client feedback loop, get one, right? Start
Yes.
to build one
Yep.
because go to market is one element of many that you can leverage from the output from a client feedback loop. And a big believer in messaging and positioning and brand and other opportunities that follow. But the go to market structure, that backbone of the reference tool that the marketing team, the sales team, leadership team needs to reference throughout the year will be really enhanced by the insights that those existing clients can provide for you. And you know what? When up to 70% of buyers today in professional services choose the shortlist before they even talk to you. It will indicate to you some of the other things that you need to be, just need to be considering as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's looking for that, for their firm to have that significant differentiator, which is very hard to come by in this profession. Not to say that it doesn't exist for many firms, but it's hard to I think communicate it, especially when oftentimes I think many firms believe their differentiator can only be fully experienced once they hire you. Right? So again, there's got to be opportunities for you to differentiate yourself from the very beginning of that client journey that begins, like you said, with them visiting potentially your site and starting to kind of bear down on that short list of firms they want to even invite to having a meaningful potential, relationship with. So differentiators, also points of parity. You mentioned looking at our competitors. How are we just as good as our competitors? Can oftentimes be a key in being a part of that initial sales conversation as well. So lots to think about there. Um, One other thing I want to throw out before we move to the next segment is my experience has been when you've got your vision for growth and firms begin to go through the planning process, the nature of a CPA is to be a really great planner, and they can put together a great plan. But oftentimes I feel like at the end of the process, it's about 80% planning and 20% strategy. Again, this is about really understanding what opportunities exist in the marketplace for growth and looking at it not necessarily so much through what are my current strengths and weaknesses in my firm. It's like, where do I need to make investments in my practice or in an area of my firm I want to see grow to drive innovation, to be unique or different, and to be able to really match up with what that buyer in that segment is looking for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I feel like I've had this conversation so many times where there are two or three things here. One is it's an opportunity for leadership of the firm to actually perform as they need to be performing and looking forward and saying, where do we need to innovate? Where are we going to grow? What are we going to do to put our resources and our time behind these things? Secondly, there may be some areas, and I've just found this in a recent conversation, where you see competitors growing in a space that you're not investing in. And you see the opportunity to leap into that space, given some of the solutions you have, some of the things that are budding within the organization. You just haven't really had the time or the energy to sit down and say, okay, now is the time through our go-to-market lens for us to say, we're going to commit to this. And we're going to commit to this area in a significant way. We're going to test and do some things, but we're going to be in this business, and we're going to try to carve out a piece of it for ourselves. I've seen that happen over and over again. most recently with a bunch of sustainability conversations where a firm was not in the sustainability business, but they knew they needed to be, and they had the resources and the insight and frankly the intellectual horsepower to do it. So there was a budding effort there that they just hadn't taken care of yet.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so again, an opportunity here. I think you and I are kind of communicating to kind of think outside the box in many ways here and continue to innovate, which is so important for firms to do today. But you and I have talked before about, innovate, but also you and I both understand that every firm is unique, right? Every firm has, a culture, if you will, that defines them. And so being able to make investments and innovate and try new things by still staying true to those values, totally important as well. And your go-to-market framework, your strategy should fit you, right?
Yes.
And so an important element. So let's move kind of to the next section, and I'll use this as a segue. A big part of having the right framework to go to market would be measurables, right? Would be having, of course, timelines, but more importantly, accountability for executing that plan, as well as the appropriate scorecard or KPIs to stay in tune with it. I often feel like nowhere is that more important than when the sales and marketing functions come together. So let's talk for a moment about what I often see as in many firms, a bit of a divide in the sales and marketing function, especially when it comes to having a similar scorecard and goals in mind. Talk to me about that.
I can't tell you how many times been part of the conversation, Chad, where sales and marketing weren't even talking to each other, and there were completely divergent strategies down to the comp plans, where you kind of looked at it and you shook your head and you said, "Well, is this the same firm?" So that's an excellent case of where you just have to. This is not there. There's no place in today's organization, a modern organization, for that to exist. You must have an alignment between your marketing organization and your sales organization to the point where you have a model that can be a funnel, it can be a 360 model, it can be a spaghetti model. Just pick one that fits you the best. And think about those go-to-market motions. Think about those go-to-market segments and the competitive positioning and the SWOT positioning. Bring those to life through the lens of the alignment and say, okay, we're going to work together on motions, top, middle, bottom of the funnel, to achieve that goal that we want to achieve, which is new clients and new business.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, again, keeping in mind that there are many firms, many of my clients don't have a devoted sales or business development professional. Some do, some don't. For those that don't, even those that do, I think we all understand that this, the accounting profession in particular is very much that seller doer model, right? Where you're responsible both for leading the delivery of service to clients as a partner or senior manager, whatever, but also have business development, new business growth responsibilities. And so whether we're talking about a devoted salesperson in your firm or the absence of one, getting that sales function that every shareholder, if you will, kind of has a responsibility for, aligned with the marketing investments is key, right? It's makes a lot of sense when you say it, but it takes alignment around scorecards and metrics. It takes some consistency in getting together routinely and having a cadence for talking about results and getting the feedback from the sales function at the point of sale that it needs to make adjustments and course corrections, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. And I can tell you a recent experience where it was a very distributed and flat biz dev organization out in the field, and a centralized corporate marketing team that I was responsible for. And there was a gap, right? There was a gap between corporate programs, if you will, and our go-to-market and this distributed team. And so we had to hire an individual who became the bridge between these corporate programs and then the actual implementation in the field at a local level that was meaningful, to the biz dev folks on a day-to-day basis. And that involves some different processes and different tools. But we very quickly had to fix that gap and close that gap because, again, you can't be efficient if you don't leverage what's happening at corporate. And at the other end of the cycle, you don't want to miss the feedback loop and the local expression of programs, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
It is. And I think far too often, firms miscalculate marketing's role through really the complete life cycle of a client. And that is to say, at the very beginning of that, they're a prospect. And certainly I think most people think about marketing in terms of drawing attention, bringing new opportunities into the funnel. But I believe an often overlooked role that marketing can play is sales enablement. And that is to say, once you have that opportunity in the funnel, how can marketing come in and provide collateral support, right? Content support, whatever it might be, to increase the velocity of that opportunity and increase your win rates and, for closing new business. And again, it's a very important part of marketing today that I think many firms just simply overlook.
Yeah, I think that the funnel approach, or the model you choose, top of the funnel being awareness generally, middle of the funnel being engagement and interest, and then lower middle of the funnel being that area where you turn into a qualified conversation, however you designate that, is driven by a strong go-to-market focus. So if you've chosen the segment, you've chosen the buyer, you've identified that buyer profile and the buyer journey, guess what? Your funnel and your conversation about the tactics that you deploy in each of those areas in the funnel becomes a lot easier.
Absolutely.
And the assignment of activities to either biz dev or marketing, because it's a symbiotic relationship, becomes much easier as well.
Agreed. Okay. Let's continue to draw down here. So we've talked, briefly about, that vision. We've talked about having a framework to execute and ensuring that we've got the right folks accountable and aligned, sales and marketing in particular. Let's shift now and close in on beginning to talk about execution and measurement. We both know that having a plan and a goal is an important step, but we also both know that the execution is often where you will run into obstacles in the execution of any plan. And so let's provide some observations and advice for our audience on how to get through this execution phase.
So first thing is, and you're right, execution is where everything happens. So you can plan all day, but if you're not executing it, I call it iteration, because you're going to change and modify along the way, then you're not going to move forward. So I love your notion of treat marketing as an investment, just like you would anything else. And by the way, expect ROI from that investment. Leadership needs to expect the end of the year or end of a couple of year cycle, what was the ROI on these programs that you executed? That's a reasonable thing to expect these days. And it involves measuring everything, right? It's putting together the KPIs, measuring things. But before you do that, execution is key. And if your go-to-market is structured in a way that it's referenceable and it has the right segments and the right buyers, then the campaigns you build in your strategy, the campaigns against, let's go back to a new area like sustainability, the content you build, the messaging you build, the headlines, the engagement activities, all the way through a cycle and up into, let's say, even an event where you try to qualify people and bring them into the business development process, all of those activities will line up pretty well, because you've already done the hard work of understanding your competitor, understanding what the pain points are, understanding where you're going to go with your messaging. So campaigns will naturally occur. And I've seen this over and over again. If you put the hard work in up front, you can start to talk about campaigns, and it's a loose word because people interpret it different ways, but campaigns in a more realistic and concrete way. And I always think of the execution as having a beginning, a middle, and an end. Everything Everything has a timeline. And so ideally, you want to get through. Some campaigns last a year, they're evergreen. Nothing lasts more than about 12 months. It can be repeated, but mostly good campaigns will last a few months. And you want to see some results. You want to see the tail of that activity turn into new lead generation. That's right.
Yeah. So again, back to what we communicated previously around alignment, whether it's sales and marketing or leadership and marketing, it's as you suggested, it's uh, once we've got the execution phase going and those campaigns going, reconnecting, looking at the scorecard, having conversations around what's working, what are the obstacles, right, that we're encountering, and how can we collaborate together to again give the firm what they need to overcome those obstacles, strengthen our messaging, whatever it might be. Being able to track that really really vital. The other thing I would throw out in this area, and again you've hit on it a couple of times, Charles, in execution, leverage all the technology that is available to you. AI obviously is certainly a big part of that today, but look for opportunities to drive efficiency in the execution of your marketing plan. Just again to share an example of that, I've got a couple of clients now that, as many firms have done, they put responsibility on their partners to have some consistency in terms of new business development. And again, it's always a real challenge for many of those partners to find the time to do that, engage in that kind of activity consistently. And so, many firms, or a couple of firms that I work with now, are leveraging AI and automated workflows to do outreach on behalf of those partners in a way that's very custom and very real in terms of messaging, et cetera. Multiple channels can be leveraged, from LinkedIn to email to other avenues. But point being, look for opportunities to drive efficiency and outreach. The beautiful thing about what I just mentioned is that once there is some level of engagement or response to that outreach, then you essentially the campaign or the sequences can shut off and allow the partner to come in and take over that real conversation moving forward. So get together, check in, what are obstacles exist, look at your scorecards, make adjustments, and don't forget to leverage technology to drive efficiencies and execution, right?
That's it. And I would tell you that, once you're into a campaign, it's a lot easier for partners, leadership, marketing, business development folks to play a role. Right, you've defined the scope of the campaign. You've defined the messaging. You've probably put some content into the marketplace. Now's the opportunity for leadership to say, "Oh, I'm going to repost that on LinkedIn, or I'm going to comment on that on LinkedIn, or I'm going to have a conversation with my client about
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
maybe just test the idea, bring that back into the loop." There are some, I'd be remiss if I didn't say there are some wonderful sales enablement platforms now that also automate the sales enablement process, where you can essentially lay out an entire sales play within the platform and have everything from content hooks through objection handling, all the way down to closing comments and closing suggestions for biz dev folks already laid out. And those tools can be enormously helpful in creating an efficiency in the pipeline. Yeah.
Absolutely. So hey, lots covered today. Charles, thank you for your time here. We've talked about right a number of attributes here. Execution is what we just ended on, and execution will be a big part of our episode 3, the final episode of this series. Again, Charles, thank you for your contributions today. So again, we built on episode 1, right? We talked a bit a day about how, when you're moving forward and building that growth engine, what's that framework you need, right? How can you get alignment and ensure that your goals are accountable? In episode 3, Charles is going to join me again, and we're going to dive down more into what I a topic that I really love, which is as a non-marketer, right? As a managing partner, as a chief growth officer, potentially as a COO, as a practice leader inside of an accounting firm, how can you get yourself in a position to be confident in leading the marketing function when it's something you've never been trained to do? And so super excited about episode 3. Please join us. I want to thank you for listening today and keep building your firm's growth engine and with clarity and confidence. Take care.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of Accounting for Growth, powered by your CMO. We help accounting leaders break the status quo. Please subscribe, share, and stay sharp. Your next big growth move starts now.